Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tebello Motwane. I'm an attorney by profession and the founder of a platform called Sister-in-Law, which is a platform dedicated to empowering women through legal education. If you guys are returning from last week's episode, you will recall that I was speaking about the terms that one should look out for in their employment contract, and one of the terms which I mentioned was that of probation. Now, before I get started with what I want to talk about in this video, the one tip that I want to give you is if this is your new job or if this is the first job where you are faced with a probation period, do this one thing for yourself. And in fact, for the rest of your career, I want you to commit to keeping a work journal. This work journal is going to allow you to track everything that happens at the office, because I am a firm believer of paper trail. It's not easy for you to always recall a conversation that you had with a supervisor or a conversation that you had with a colleague, but if you have a journal and you write down dates, and you make sure that you record everything maybe on a weekly basis. If you are committed to recording on a daily basis, you can record everything on a daily basis, but I would say a weekly basis also just gives you a nice opportunity to reflect on what the week has been like, for example. But basically, I need you to commit to having a work journal, because it is going to save your butt in the event that something goes wrong. We obviously hope that nothing goes wrong at the workplace, but this is corporate South Africa and you want to cover your ASS. Yes, I don't want to say the full word because whatever. Anyway, so this work journal is going to allow you to obviously then record incidences that happen with any of your supervisors, managers, colleagues, whatever the case is. And in turn, I also want you to get into the habit of following up any tricky conversations or any tricky meetings you have with your supervisors, your managers, or colleagues with an email. Always say, "Hello, Kate, as per our discussion earlier, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Hello, Jabu, as per our meeting earlier, A, B, C, D, E, F, G." And this comes in handy, particularly during your probation period, because this is the period where your employer is onboarding you and trying to figure out if you are a good fit for the company. Now, legally, the purpose of probation is for your potential employer to sort of decide what your work performance is like. So, for example, it's not based on whether or not you look good, you smell good, you're from a good family, you're from a good school, or whatever the case is, but it's to give your employer an opportunity to see that you can perform the tasks or perform your duties according to the specifications of the job and according to the requirements of the job itself, like the reason why you were hired to come and do that job. There is no what's the word I'm looking for? There is no prescribed period for the probation period, but generally it's 3 to 6 months, and this 3 to 6 months depends on the nature of the job and the circumstances of the job. Usually it's 3 months. It could be 6 months, like I said. Anything over 6 months could be flagged as an unfair labor practice. And obviously it's up to the employer to then motivate the extension for, that probation period. So one of the things that you must understand about probation is that you're not yet formally employed. It is a conditional employment contract, in other words. It's a conditional employment contract based on how you perform. In last week's video, though, I stated that this probation period can also give you a good indication or allow you to also, audition the company and find out if it's a good fit for you. If it's not a good fit for you, you obviously then have the choice of applying for jobs and hopefully being able to secure something else before you then make the decision to resign. But back to the issue of probation, the rules of probation and whether you can be dismissed during probation are regulated by the Code of Good Practice on dismissal during probation period. Now, it is not uncommon for employers to think that when somebody is on probation, then they are not protected by labor law. You are protected by labor law. And I want you to use this video to take advantage of the fact that you are protected as a conditional employee. It's not right, or it's not possible for an employer to just fire you on the basis of, not liking your face, or wanting to, do the boss a favor and, put in the boss's daughter, the boss's son, a friend of a friend, so forth. There must be a clear procedural fairness that is followed before you can be dismissed during your probation period. I'm just going to grab my laptop to give some of the guidelines regarding dismissal during your probation period. The code says the following: any person determining whether a dismissal for poor work for performance is unfair should consider A, whether or not the employee failed to meet the performance standard; B, if the employee did not meet a required performance standard, whether or not the employee was aware or could reasonably be expected to have been aware of the required performance standard; the employee was given a fair opportunity to meet the required performance standard; and dismissal was an appropriate sanction for not meeting the required performance standard. What that basically means is that during your onboarding, your employer must provide you with clear instructions of what the expectations are. Your employer must also provide you with training tools. Your employer must also provide you with counseling where they can see that obviously you're lacking, and obviously then, give you tools that enable you to perform in a satisfactory manner. This means, well, what I want to say on this point is that don't wait for your employer to equip you with the tools to be able to do the job. As a person, you must also know your weaknesses. If you can see that that Excel spreadsheet is dribbling you, you're the one that needs to go and approach your supervisor, your manager, and say, I never learned how to put together a spreadsheet, or I never learned how to, click a button and then it's going to take all the data that's in the spreadsheet and put it into a graph. I didn't learn that at varsity level. Please, can you offer some sort of training? Is there a colleague you can refer me to who's been doing this for a few years? I'm willing to put in 30 minutes after, my 9 to 5. I'm willing to put in 30 minutes on a Zoom call with a team member, or even with yourself as the manager, just so that you can guide me and train me on this process. Basically, don't wait for your employer to be the one to notice when you are supposed to submit something that you're not able to do it. The very first day you get an instruction and you feel overwhelmed, don't sit it out for too long. If you've really tried your best to try and impress the employer and you're still battling, I really advise you to, first thing the next day at the office, confront your employer or approach them and say, I'm not understanding this specific instructions. Can you please provide, guidance, counsel, instruction, training on how to produce the results that you're looking for? You really need to be intentional about taking your career into your own hands. Another point that I want to make is that in the event that your employer has not given you training tools or enabled you to be able to perform the work properly, that could be grounds for you to take the matter to the CCMA if you are then dismissed for poor performance during your probation period. You can take the matter to the CCMA, and obviously that's when that journal and that recording will come into play. Were you proactive enough to say, I don't understand what's going on, I'm being dribbled by ABC, please help me? When you then received training, were you proactive enough to say, to go back to the employer with an email saying, thank you for training me on how to put together an Excel spreadsheet. This is my takeaway. Here's the attached spreadsheet. Please guide me on whether or not I understood the instruction properly the second time around. And, that's how you then start building your expertise. Write down everything. Paper trail is very important. You never know when that information may come in handy. Follow up everything by email. Another point that I want to make is that in the event that you're then being dismissed during your probation period, it is procedurally fair and it's a procedural requirement that you are given an opportunity to defend yourself for your poor work performance and then given an opportunity to rectify that poor work performance. You are also allowed to use a representative from a trade union, or you're allowed to be represented by, a colleague. It's important to sort of form an alliance with colleagues who have been at the job longer than you have, because in the event of you not understanding what's going on, they can also provide guidance and counsel. And just as wrapping up, one thing that I want to add with regards to this conversation is that your employer, here it says, once the employer places an employee on probation, they have a number of legal obligations, including clarifying the length of the probation period. Very important. You actually have to know, am I on probation for 3 months? Am I on probation for 6 months? If it's longer than that, please go back to your employer and try to understand why you are on probation for, a longer period than 3 to 6 months. Also have conversations in the office about these things, guys. I know a lot of times we're not allowed to discuss things like our pay slips, politics of the company, but it is a nice gauge to understand, okay, we are all doing our first year of articles, or we are all doing our internship. Is everybody given this duration of probation? If not, be brave enough to interrogate why your probation is longer. Second thing is setting reasonable performance standards. You can't get in on the first day or the first month of work and then the employer does then expect you to learn how to put together an excellent Excel spreadsheet without you having had prior training. Specifying for and explaining to the employee the performance standards required, evaluating and monitoring the employee's performance against the set performance standards, informing the employee of performance shortcomings, issuing warnings to the employee where she is failing to meet the required standards, assisting, guiding, counseling, training the employee where necessary, and before dismissing the employee, giving him or her an opportunity to state their case. Those are just some of the points that I want you to internalize if you're serving your probation period now, or if you find yourself serving a probation period in future, and understand your rights. Understand that if there is a dispute relating to your probation period or you being dismissed during your probation period, you do have recourse to approach the CCMA. I hope this video was educational and informative. If it was, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Till next time, ciao.